Michael Cannell is, as I introduced him, is also working on some projects on the internet, and he had a couple of comments that he wanted to share with people that he thought could shed some light on.
Yeah, and Dominique said that she started a blog in order to continue the conversation after she finished the book. I kind of did the opposite. I started a blog because I was writing the book. This is a book about, non-fiction book about a rivalry between two drivers on the Ferrari race team, Grand Prix team of the late 50s. And I mean, I'm a guy, I mean, I can't even drive. You know, I don't own a car. I don't even particularly like cars. And so I was writing a book, or I am writing a book, on a topic that has this, you know, incredibly rich, devoted following, and I was the ultimate outsider. And you know, one of the things that I have to say that has been really helpful was to try to do this thing that called crowdsourcing. People know that term, crowdsourcing. Crowdsourcing, I think, is a term that it's a kind of conjunction of outsourcing and crowd. So you're basically creating a conversation online. You're creating an online community, and then you are allowing that discourse, that dialogue, to enrich your understanding of the topic. And in my case, for better or for worse, I've used it to try to get the answer to really, really specific questions. I mean, the big questions somehow seem easier because inevitably a lot is written about them. But, for example, at the Monte Carlo Grand Prix, one of the drivers drove his car right into the post office by, you know, an accident. And, you know, who was it? Nobody seems to know. So I posted that. I posted that online. The British cars were always green, British racing green. But for some reason, some of the British cars were blue. I couldn't figure that out. So I put it online, and really just within 24 hours, I got an answer. And people who have read the blog, I mean, just 2 days ago, I got an email from this incredibly articulate and knowledgeable person who was going to read my manuscript and probably point out all of my egregious mistakes in the manuscript. So crowdsourcing for me has been this very, very valuable exercise in almost collaboration, you know. And I mean, it works. It worked for me in this case because of the nature of the subject matter and because of the nature of the community. I mean, people have stepped up and volunteered their time, and they send me books, you know, and they Xerox things from their personal collections and send them to me. If I was writing a memoir, would it work? I don't really know if it would have worked. If I was writing a historical novel, would it work? Probably. If I was writing a book that was sort of about a novel about one's, you know, interior, emotional life, could you use crowdsourcing for that? I don't know. My guess is no. So I think the bottom line, I think, is that crowdsourcing will work in some situation, but not others. So, you know, I mean, I guess many of us do this, right? Writers have quirky habits. My kind of quirky habit is that I'm a little bit like a dog that has to kind of circle around and do circles before it lies down. You know, I'm a little bit like that. I don't want to sit down and go to work on the book first thing in the morning. What I do is I post images to 5 design websites that I have. The main one is called the Design Vote. So I spend a very, very pleasurable hour and a half in the morning kind of looking at lots of design images and posting them to these sites where readers can vote. It's kind of a classic thumbs up or thumbs down. They can vote on whether they like something or not. And I started it partially, I started it in the midst of the Obama campaign. It was sort of like, in a way, you know, a joke. in that regard. But I also posted it because some of my colleagues up here who are involved in the design world, I think, will relate to this. You know, in the design world, when I was a design editor, I always felt a little guilty because we were receiving designs from publicists and we were publishing them, and I think in some way we were complicit in this idea that we're going to tell the public what is a classic. This is this year's instant classic, you have to buy it. And so I started these websites in a way as just an exercise in testing that. You know, let's let people say what they really think of these designs rather than us telling them what's good or what's bad. I also started this because I had made the transition. I used to work at the New York Times, and then I worked at Dwell magazine, which is an architecture and design magazine. And there are many difficult things about working at the New York Times. But by and large, we were working with people of great integrity, cooperative people, and nice people. And I have to say that wasn't my experience at Dwell magazine, at least not with the editor-in-chief. And so I thought, I've got to have my own project if I'm going to stay here. And my own project was to be the editor of the website, which was this amazing experience to go from print to digital. But one thing I discovered is that, you know, I was surrounded by really smart 26-year-olds, and I would sit through long meetings with them and pretty much have no idea what they were talking about. You know, and so even though I was their boss, they were really running the show. And so I started this website in order to, you know, just to monkey around and try to understand how the mechanics of blogs. And I think that's a really good, you know, exercise for all of us, is just to start the things and just to monkey around and just, you know, experiment and learn as you go. And my last thing here is this thing about, so, you know, I've just about finished this book about car racing, and I've been thinking, you know, I really got to have an author. Everybody has an author website, and I sort of have an author website, but it's just basically my email address on a blogger site. So, you know, my publisher published a book called War by Sebastian Junger. Many of you know that book. And Sebastian Junger, my editor at one point, I was in his office, and he said, you got to look at Sebastian Junger's website. He's created this, you know, unbelievable, muscular website with, you know, and there's this incredible online community, and it's you know, so he's writing about the Afghan war, and the website is mostly the participants in his social aspect of his website are mostly people who are soldiers and the families and soldiers. So there's this fervent following. So I think for all of us, we have to ask ourselves for author websites. You know, I mean, we know all of the things that can be on there. Do we want that? There's a social component. You know, there's we could have like our Twitter feed. We can do, you know, but you know, it's a very difficult question. One of the smartest guys in the editorial world I know is a guy named Jerry Maserati, who used to be the editor of the Times Magazine. And I read an interview with him recently, and he said, the interviewer said, how is this all going to work in 5 or 10 years? And he said, the way it's going to work in 5 or 10 years is you're not going to gravitate to the New Yorker or the Atlantic or the New York Times. You're going to gravitate to writers. The writers will be the brand. And you won't gravitate to them because just because you're interested in reading what they've written. You're going to gravitate to them because you want to read the entire social media aspect around what they've written. So do we all want that as part of our author websites? I don't know the answer to that, but I think personally that's the tough question I'm going to be asking myself in the next month or so is do I need to build that kind of website, or alternatively should it just be something very, very simple, a kind of digital version of a business card?
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
let's ask the crowd. Everyone here. Let's crowdsource it.
Yeah.
How many people have bought a book here in this room and you saw a muscular website for the book, and you thought, I got to go out and buy that book? Okay, a couple of you. So it's kind of worth it, because the whole point is selling your book, right? Or like, same thing with a movie. Has anyone gone to a movie because you saw a website for it and thought, yeah, I'm totally going to go to that movie? Yeah, a couple. So I don't know.
Yeah.
You
There
see
you
the
go.
movie and then you go to the website, or you read the book and then you go to the website.
Yeah.
Right. All right.
Yeah, David, maybe you can talk a little bit about how you are kind of putting your energies towards splitting it between author book, because you are promoting something yourself. Do you have a kind of a split there where you're doing more author than book, or book than author?
Book versus author?
Yeah, in terms of the energies you're putting on the internet and
Oh, right.
marketing.
I mean, I got on social media because I had a book coming out. That's, you sell a book and immediately your publisher says, you got to start a blog, you got to get on Twitter and Facebook. Well, I didn't start a blog, actually, but I did get on Twitter and Facebook. And my book, which is about my search to find the lost foreskin of Jesus, and I'm not making that up. That's no joke. So I started a Twitter for myself, David Farley, and then I started one, Holy Foreskin, at Holy Foreskin. And I'm really not lying. What's so funny?
So that domain name was available.
No, it was not, actually. But no, I mean, the Twitter was
Oh, I
available.
see.
And I found that that I get a lot more attention with just my name, because that allows me as an author and a writer and like a self-promoting author and writer to it frees me to write on Twitter whatever I want, and I'm not limited to the subject of my book. So for the Holy Foreskin Twitter account, I was just tweeting the history of the Holy Foreskin. And it was kind of just a gamble, because I just thought, oh, maybe like it'll be on like the New York Magazine approval matrix or something, like Jesus' foreskin tweets its history about itself. But that was my fantasy. But that didn't really work out. But I found that my own personal Twitter account has been pretty popular. So I feel like if you start like a Twitter account for your book or a blog for your book, you really got to like do it like right away. I know so many authors right now, people who have books coming out, who just got on Twitter, just started a blog like 3 months before their book comes out. It's like, it's not really going to sell very many books. You got to really establish yourself first, this platform that we're talking about. And then once your book comes out, it'll do a lot better.
That's a good point, really good point. Can we hold questions for a little bit?
Did we talk about that one already?
The author site versus the book site. Yeah, that's actually what David was just talking about. Like,
Okay.
it is sometimes. Well, I think it depends on what your book is, how close a subject it is to you. Maybe if it's a memoir, personal narrative, sometimes it makes sense to actually do all your marketing within your own name. Some nonfiction books maybe lend themselves more to a persona. For a Twitter handle or a Facebook page. I've experimented a lot on the internet, and I've found that I wished I had just gone strictly by my name from the beginning and put all my energies into that, because I had some great ideas. Some of them panned out better than others. Spent all the time building the followings for them in different ways, and then in the end decided that wasn't what I wanted to spend every day doing. So sometimes it's not just about whether something's successful or not. I think you really have to have a passion for what you're doing to keep it up, because it's a really big job. So if you have any doubts that you're going to be passionate enough about something when you start it, when you're setting up Twitter, Facebook, blogs, just make sure you're taking care of yourself in that. If you have any doubts that that's going to be where you want to continue, do everything in your name, because you're always going to be the writer or the author behind it.
Thank you.